Sheriff Thurman, would you start us with the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Prosecutor Teeman, would you open in prayer?
Almighty and merciful Lord, we thank you this day for the many opportunities that you have given us to serve others. We'd ask that you guide our hands in our decision-making through your Spirit, that we may confidently address the complicated issues that our county faces. We ask that those decisions be made, that any credit and glory be to you, and all the people of God say,
Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And welcome. If you're watching this, you're watching a recorded version. It is 9:51 here. We tried multiple times to go live with this meeting. Unfortunately, technology is good until it isn't. So we will be monitoring questions and trying to answer those accordingly. But this is our July 21st Commissioners meeting. Can we get started by the approval of the minutes of July 14th?
I'd make a motion that we approve the minutes of July 14th as submitted by our clerk.
I'll second.
Mr. Davis.
Aye.
Ms. Coleman.
Aye.
Mr. Powell.
Aye.
And the matter request for appropriation and transfer of funds.
Any comments or questions on item 2? Hearing none.
Motion to approve.
I'll second.
Ms. Coleman.
Aye.
Mr. Davis.
Aye.
Mr. Powell.
Aye.
In the matter of memorandum of understanding between the Scioto County Department of Job and Family Services, Scioto County Commissioners, and the AFSCME Local 3501 and Scioto County Children's Services Board and AFSCME Local 2718 regarding bargaining unit combination.
This is communication from Job and Family Services. This is the memorandum of understanding with AFSCME Local 2718, Job and Family Services, AFSCME Local 3501 bargaining units that are combining, and that all combined staff will then operate under Job and Family Services, AFSCME Local 3501. This is a contract effective July 1, 22. This is one of the final steps of the combination in terms of staff. This moves the CPS team into the union of the JFS team. What does that look like in terms of compensation and pay? Our CPS, to fit into the structure within JFS, most CPS employees did see a wage increase and also a difference in their benefits. I think their benefits cost decrease. Correct me if I'm wrong, Tammy. The total cost of this combination is roughly $100,000. But the team there at CPS, this gets them in line with their counterparts at JFS, and my understanding people are happy with this combination. It's been a good collaboration. We appreciate the union reps for both teams for working together and getting this done, and of course the teams there at GFS and CPS. But this is their bargaining unit combination agreement. So any additional comments or questions? Hearing none.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Mr. Davis.
Aye.
Ms. Coleman.
Aye.
Mr. Powell.
Aye.
In the matter of accepting miscellaneous reports.
Any comments or questions on our miscellaneous reports? Hearing none.
Motion to accept.
Second.
Ms. Coleman.
Aye.
Mr. Davis.
Aye.
Mr. Powell.
Aye.
In the matter of accepting an amended certificate from the Budget Commission.
Any comments or questions on the amended certificate? Hearing none.
Motion to accept.
Second.
Mr. Davis.
Aye.
Ms. Coleman.
Aye.
Mr. Powell.
Aye.
In the matter of agreement amendment between the Board of Commissioners of Scioto County, Ohio and Advanced Building Restoration regarding courthouse roof masonry repair.
This is a clarification item with an agreement amendment to add and clarify that $60,303 is to be paid upon the satisfactory completion of each side of the roof's cornice. I think the original agreement just had $60,330 being one side, so this is a clarification for the benefit of our vendor. We've already talked about this project of fixing the cornice and the roof, but this is, once again, it's paid for. Comments or questions?
My understanding, Ryan's going to be having a meeting with them regarding safety, is that right? Prior to the start of the project. It's something we're very concerned about because they will not have this project done prior to the election.
That takes place tomorrow.
Yes, so it's, the meeting does, but yes, so it's a major concern as far as safety and also access to the building. So they're going to review all of the procedures, make sure everything's covered, and that the safety, the building is made safe, especially where the public access points are, to avoid any potential issues. So just wanted to bring that up, and also for the public to know and be aware, and we've mentioned this in several meetings already, but to be aware of potential barriers that may be put up to make it safer for everyone, and that everyone needs to abide by those barriers, not just the public in general, but also our employees, so that we don't have any issues with that. So I just wanted to add that to the meeting today, so that everybody knows what's going on.
Thank you for that. Any additional comments or questions? Hearing none?
Motion to approve.
I'll second.
Ms. Coleman.
Aye.
Mr. Davis.
Aye.
Mr. Powell.
Aye.
And the matter request for fund transfers.
There's one item I'd like to pull out on fund transfers. There's a fairground project to help pave part of the midway. This is in collaboration with the engineer. He is going to be paying half of this project and requested that we pay the other half. It's $24,500 to do some paving to the midway and basically fix some of the midway out there. My understanding, it will be done in time for the fair. So any additional comments or questions?
I just want to thank Eugene Game and the Fair Board for having some vision in the future on that project and working with the county engineer, LeBrun. That saves a lot of time and labor as far as setting up and all the getting mobilized to do it. While Shelley is on site, they're there. They're already doing Fairground Road, so they'll just swing in. And my understanding is they're going to be paving that first road coming in and going straight down by all of the exhibit buildings. So appreciate their vision and working together across several jurisdictional lines. Thank you.
Good. Additional comments or questions? Hearing none?
I will make a motion to approve the fund transfers.
I'll second.
Mr. Davis.
Aye.
Ms. Coleman.
Aye.
Mr. Powell.
Aye.
And the matter of LPA agreement amendment for Scioto County Road 253, 0.43000, Dogwood Ridge Road, paving regarding the Scioto County engineer.
This is the LPA agreement for Dogwood Ridge paving, updating the maximum amount of the federal funds for this project. The total cost for this project is estimated to be $666,697.74. ODOT shall provide the LPA 80% of the eligible costs up to the maximum of $435,000 in federal funds. Any comments or questions? Hearing none.
Motion to approve.
I'll second.
Ms. Coleman.
Aye.
Mr. Davis.
Aye.
Mr. Powell.
Aye.
And the matter of resolution to transfer funds from the Medicaid Local Sales Tax Transition Fund to the General Fund.
This is to move $1.5 million from the MCO, from the general fund. Some of this will be to go towards, it's not 1.5. It's 1.9.
Yeah, 1.922879.
1.922879.
Correct.
This goes to the cornice project, the roof project, some technology, and then also economic development at the SOAR Business Park for enhancements to the spec building. Any additional comments or questions on the movement of MCO funds to the general fund? Hearing none?
Make a motion to adopt.
I'll second.
Mr. Davis.
Aye.
Ms. Coleman.
Aye.
Mr. Powell.
Aye.
And the matter request for appropriation of funds.
Any comments or questions on the appropriations? Hearing none,
Motion to approve?
Second.
Ms. Coleman,
Aye.
Mr. Davis,
Aye.
Mr. Powell.
Aye.
In the matter of approving the payment of the regular schedule of accounts for the various funds, moral obligations, and the then and now certificates in the total amount of $565,691.76.
Any comments or questions on the docket? Hearing none?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Mr. Davis,
Aye.
Ms. Coleman,
Aye.
Mr. Powell.
Aye.
In the matter of resolution determining the necessity of the submission to the electors of the question of levying a tax regarding children's services.
This is one of the reasons I was hoping we could be live today, but unfortunately, it's not the case. So once again, we will be monitoring for questions. This resolution is determining the necessity of a tax levy for the CPS. It's been very public over the past year in terms of the struggle that CPS has been going through in terms of the amount of kids in care, amount of kids in custody, and what that cost truly does to the county and to their budget. We saw last year all of their reserves depleted, roughly $2 million depleted from the start of last year. I know Director Mantell had been talking about a potential levy now for probably a year and a half or so. We are now officially combined, and I want to be clear that as of July 1. So while this board made the decision to restructure the CPS board, and CPS board agreed to that, there was still very much let's call it a 3-month transition period where all the legal had to happen, or all the financial had to happen, or everything had to happen for it to be rolled up under JFS. I know Tammy and Jason's been doing a ton of work with statewide JFS, statewide fiscal, to figure out what is this, what does it look like. Currently, our revenue for CPS it is adequate for about 130, is that the right number? About 130 kids. We'll get an update on what our numbers here are in just a second. There are things we're fixing. And Prosecutor Teeman, thank you for being here as well. We know the system is strained, but there's also opportunity for improvement. I will say over the past couple months, I've been encouraged by the collaboration between CPS, JFS, the prosecutor's office, the Judge Lemons, because I don't think a lot of people truly understand that this process touches multiple areas. And if one area is in a backlog or another area is moving, it kind of slows down the whole system. So the collaboration and communication over the past several months has been encouraging, and I know that'll continue. They're working closely together for scheduling purposes to kind of get kids through the system when it needs to happen, but also no longer than it should take. So what we are looking at today is a replacement of the current levy at the 2016 evaluation, I believe, and then also an additional $2 million levy to be considered. This is a number's a little bit better than the first number we were hit with, which was about 3.5 mil. But it's still an increase, and we're still very mindful of what that does to the taxpayers. And it is important for them to know what we've done, where we're at, and really where we hope to be. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Director Morton to talk kind of about that JFS combination has looked like. And I'm sure she'll turn it over to Director Mantell and then Shane, Director Prosecutor Teeman, if you can add kind of what your office has been doing to this point and what the rest of the year looks like.
Sure. Thank you, Chairman. It's been a heavy lift. We are doing it with grateful hearts. We know that this is the right thing at the right time for the right reason. So we will see good things come, but right now it's a little bumpy, but we're putting every effort forth to make it as positive of a transition as we can. So now officially Scioto JFS is a triple combined agency, having public assistance, child support, and children's services. So that is new for us. Our two bargaining units have merged. You guys approved that just a few minutes ago. So we are working diligently with the leadership from the unions and working on policies and procedures that have to change as a result of the different operations that Children's Services brings into the JFS world. So we're working through labor management meetings and having really good conversations and communication, working through that. It's a process, so it'll take a while. We are in the middle of combining the finance and operations and will physically move Children's Services into the JFS structure later this fall. We don't have an official date on that yet, but we're going to work toward making that happen as soon as we can. There's a lot involved. State fiscal, as you mentioned, has been helping us with the financial transition. There's a lot involved with that. But what that brings me to is to talk about the reason for this resolution of necessity. Our current levy provides around $1.2 million annually for Children's Services. And we receive around $2 million from state and federal funding. So that gives Children's Services specifically, not JFS, but Children's Services specifically, about $3.2 million to operate. Sadly, we are projecting $5.8 million in foster care placement costs alone this year. So with a $3.2 million budget to operate, and we've got a $5.8 million foster care placement expense in front of us, we're in a shortfall. So that doesn't take into account any of the operational costs, that $5.8 million for foster placement. So it's nearly a $3 million shortfall. That's nothing to sneeze at. And that's nothing that you can pick up here and place here. I mean, that's pretty significant. So the shortfall currently is being covered by you all using the ARPA funds, and then ultimately it would come out of the general fund. So that is not something that can be sustained long term. So that is why we're going to have to ask for this additional levy to cover these costs, and certainly not something anybody wants to do, but we feel it's very necessary for us to be able to operate and keep children safe and continue to do what we're doing and improve things as well. So I know
a lot of the financial piece to where we are right now. And I know there's always a question about total number of children in care and where we are with that. So we have had a slight reduction in the last couple of months. Again, we're not where we'd like to be. We do have multiple crises in our community that do require us to remove more children than we would like to. But currently we have 365 children in care. 29 of those are in permanent custody, which means we are the custodians for those 29 children. And then there are 336 in temporary custody. So that is a reduction. We are at a reduction of about 30 from our highest point, which I think prosecutor may speak a little more about the terminations, and his group and the two dedicated assistant prosecutors to our team are working diligently. We also have, we still have, for at least a little while, our own attorney for a few more months, which is also assisting in that process. Obviously, our numbers are large. They are larger than most any area. As I've shared with the commissioners, Scioto and Adams County Children's Services bounce back and forth for the highest number of children as far as comparatively per thousand in the state of Ohio. And it's not any secret that we're neighbors and we share a lot of the same problems. So again, I want to be fair. We're not the only ones experiencing this, but we here today are responsible for this county. We have made some steps to make some improvements, as Tammy mentioned. That was part of the reason of the combination. Before the combination and through the combination, we do have an memorandum of understanding with Wendy's Wonderful Kids, and that is at no cost to the county, that is at no cost to the taxpayers. So Wendy's Wonderful Kids provides opportunities for people like us, for agencies like ours, to receive free assistance for adoption of children. They focus more on teenagers, as you know, statistically and historically, teenagers, it's a little bit tougher to have those children adopted, so they focus on the older population. So we are working through that right now, and that is, again, that is a free service, and we have a team dedicated to working with them. We also have an MOU with our local community action, which we have signed and agreed to. Luann Valentine is really doing a great job, and Steve Sturgill being willing to work with us. So they are at this point, we're aiming for mid-August. CAO at no cost, again, to taxpayers or the commissioners or the county, this is grant funded. They're going to be providing us 2 case aids. Now, they can't do everything that a caseworker can do, but what they can do is take a lot of the agency visitation time away and allow our caseworkers to spend more time in the field. So that's number one. We want to be able to better serve our community and our partners. But number two, it ultimately, we hope, as Tammy and I have discussed, it'll be a cost savings because it can reduce overtime. Because right now, our caseworkers, every caseworker we have is above the state best practice recommendation for caseload. Most of them are twice as many as they should have. The state recommendation for a caseworker in the ongoing department, which works with families from a few months to years, is 12 to 15. Many of our caseworkers are at 30, 28, 32, and that's just the number of cases, that's not number of children. At one time during this situation, in the time I've been there, we had one caseworker who had 71 children on there. And again, there was nowhere for those children to go because of the caseload of other children, of other caseworkers. So we are working with partners, local and state and federal when we can, to do things at a cost savings. I think, we are headed in a positive direction with this merge. Obviously, we work with law enforcement, and the sheriff's here today, to try to work together. If we can avoid removals safely, we will. But if there's no other option, or if it is in the best interest of that child and that family, then we're going to remove. And I know one thing Commissioner Davis and I spoke about, I think probably my first month on the job, was take a look at how we handle things. Are we handling it appropriately? And I know we've talked about the word aggressive. We remove at a rate that is in many months more aggressive than anyone. And I want everyone to understand is aggressive doesn't mean careless and reckless. It's appropriate. When there is some middle ground, we lean toward the safety of the child and we remove. And that doesn't always make everyone happy, and we realize that. And when we don't remove, we also understand that we frustrate certain people. There is no perfect formula. But with all of that, I do think we're on the right track. It is going to take, a financial boost from somewhere. And as you all have discussed, and as we have discussed, there are very few avenues for agencies like ours to find funding. And so that's why, obviously, we're here today. So with that, I don't know if you do want to hear from Prosecutor Tiemann or...
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Morning, Chairman, Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to add my 2 cents to this. As you know, Scioto County Prosecutor's Office took over representation of Children's Services about a year ago, give or take, through the former board. And so we started getting the systems in place, designing the processes and the personnel to effectively do that. We wanted a more encompassing representation for that organization and in whatever form it may take. And now we're under JFS, which there are great people on that board, as we all agree. But I think the board situation, as the state has leaned, is a little clunky. And now we're under JFS, and we are in that transition phase where hopefully those things that can be remedied by the streamlining of the agency will be remedied. We have, for every child that is in custody, that is a case we have. And my people know that they need to consider that case a child, and that's how they think of it. And so it quickly became apparent to me that one full-time attorney would not be able to handle the rigors of the due diligence required to do these cases professionally and competently. So we hired an additional prosecutor as well as a paralegal and secretary. So the first thing was getting acclimated, and there's so many different facets to a child's case when they're in children's services. There's emergency removals, there's initial safety plans if we can avoid removal, there's case plans that are developed, there's getting the services set up for the parents, and then ultimately we have this category later on when the kids are safe in children's services custody, which is something we have improved upon as well over the last couple of years. When they're safe in children's services custody, there's an end game. And one of the concerns you rightfully have as a board is the cost associated with placement. Logically, the longer children are in custody, the more costs there are. So one of the limitations that the private attorney situation had was a limitation on the hours and resources that they could apply towards that. When you are removing children, unfortunately at times left and right because of the opioid epidemic and all the big city issues we have in our small county town, that overwhelms, and you have to prioritize removing those children from those dangerous situations, the immediate danger, before you can look at, okay, how do we transition this kid out of foster care? How do we prepare them to be adults? And so that created, unfortunately, a backlog of around 100 cases past the 2-year mark. Under Ohio law, if a child has been in custody for 12 out of 24 months, you start looking at some kind of permanency plan for that child, whether that be finding some other legal custodian, whether that be an adoption process, whether that be, okay, he or she is 16, we're going to start educating them on how to be an adult. And so those are all different things that the caseworkers and their collateral services in the community have to go through and work through, and in the court system they have to go through and work through. But there's an opportunity there to make sure we're doing everything we can to be in the best interest of the children, but at the same time reduce those costs. And certainly if we're going to go to the voters of Scioto County, they need to be assured that we are doing everything we can in a responsible manner to keep the costs right where they need to be. And so one of the things we've started focusing on is that backlog. And I've got some numbers if you can.
Yeah, I'd love to hear.
Okay. So when we took over, and Judge Lemons was instrumental in all this too, he's been part of these conversations, and there were with the agency approximately 89 children that were post 24 months, which means there should be some kind of action in court